Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you joined us today. This is our third module of our webinar series, Being Your Own Boss, Courageous or Crazy. Today we're going to be talking about matching goals to alternatives. I'm Leslie Lautzenhiser with Brand Choice, and with me on the call today with our meeting is Carl Dierschow with Smallfish Business Coaching. Carl.
Thanks, Leslie. Good to talk with you again, and we have a whole lot of great stuff to get through, so let's get started. And, if you have any questions, pop up, and we'll see what we can address here as we go through this. So I wanted to start off talking about a core concept that you're going to be getting a lot of advice and information from other people as you do your due diligence and explore business possibilities. But you always have to take it back to the fact that you have your own goals and skills and interests and all that. And you can't let other people drive your decision to the extent of making the decision for you. And this is both on the good side or the bad side, because if you're looking to buy into a franchise or somebody else's company, for instance, they're trying to sell you something, and so they won't necessarily tell you all the negative part. You have to be kind of cautious about that. Or in my experience too, I talked about people who had worked with various companies and no longer did. And so I would hear some of their scare stories to say, well, this is why it did not work for me. Well, it was very useful information, but I have to be really cautious that just because they were dissatisfied would not mean that I would be. So you have to think about it both ways, and ultimately you're making a very personal decision here, basing it upon your goals and what you want to do. So let's talk about how we would go through the decision process and the kind of information that we would gather. So when we're evaluating alternatives, we start off with, does it meet your goals and objectives? And that's why we spent the entire first module in this area, because no matter how good something is, if it's not going to meet your goals, then ultimately it's going to fail for you. Might have succeeded for somebody else, but you have to be comfortable. It's going to take a lot of work, so you have to get through your inspiration and keep your energy up and be excited about it, because you could be working hard on this for years. And so you got to be having the passion that it indeed is meeting your goals and objectives. So Leslie, why don't you talk about this one?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. And a thing you said is true, and hopefully it's starting to resonate with you guys on the call today about how exciting of a proposition is, but how many alternatives there are, and hopefully we can guide you through the best way to get through those. What I'm going to be talking here a little bit is the true investment of time and money that it truly takes to get in and through the growing curves of a new business. And if you go ahead and advance the next slide, Carl, yes. This curve is really intended to help guide you in deciding the types of businesses that you might evaluate, those that might rise to the surface as those that are going to be more appealing to you than others. This slide really illustrates the time of investment, both in time and money, to kind of get you to the point where you feel that you're moving along and making progress and reaching your financial goals. And if you can see in the beginning, the time is exponential. You're putting in a lot of time in the beginning of it. The whole notion of, really want to become an entrepreneur, you do work the business, pretty much constantly. And that is true, and I do want everyone to understand that there is time commitment in the early stages of the business. And that, too, is with money. As you can see in the beginning, you're going to be putting money into the business. And at some point, there's a couple of critical milestones along the way that's important for you to understand. And the first one is essentially when you see the black line intersecting with the red up to a positive level, that first point is really kind of when you get to initial break even on your costs. And I want to caution that this is not break even on initial investment, but this means that what you are generating from the business at least matches the expenses that you're putting into the business, and you're kind of net. You're not losing money necessarily on a daily or monthly basis. You're earning as much as you're putting in. And this is a critical point in the evolution of a business, because what comes right after that is a very nice point of a business, and that's called positive cash flow. And at that point, the growth of profit hopefully becomes exponential. You'll be in the black at that point, that nice arrow pointing upwards, which means that you can generally draw from the business, or if you've got additional cushion to fund your personal expenses, this might be a time that you can invest in other equipment, or you might be able to hire people. You're essentially at a point where you're growing and you are outstripping your expenses. So this is a really, really critical time point. Further along the spectrum is the next big milestone, where you might be actually recouping your initial investment. And depending on the type of business that you choose, this could be a shorter period of time, this could be years, and it could even take longer than that. But you still could be in a cash flow positive situation, meaning that you're actually paying yourself, and hopefully paying yourself what you have budgeted or what your goals are, but you are actually in a nice positive area and able at that point to start putting money away to recoup your initial investment. When we talk about alternatives and the cushion that we've spoken about, it's very important for you to understand the various types of businesses that are out there and what time frame is normally predicted for you to reach that first good milestone, which is sort of the net. You're breaking even, and then cash flow, and then recouping the investment. So depending on your financial resources, the time that you have to achieve that, and the money that you have that can achieve that goal, it's really very critical for you to understand this grid and your comfort along the path of how long it's going to take you to reach kind of your financial goals. Carl?
Yeah, so here was a great question, which is, as a business owner, you're like the last person to get paid in the entire business, right? So at what point on this curve can you start actually extracting a salary out of this?
Well, it really depends on, your resources going in front. In some cases, in franchise businesses that I'm familiar with, the franchise company will actually want you to budget a small salary for either the general manager, if that's yourself, in the very early stages. So the money that you're kind of investing in the business factors that in. Generally, in most cases, that is possible or can be achieved at the point that you are beyond that net. Once you're able to start a positive cash flow, that's a time where you can pay yourself. Everything else is budgeted. That's fixed expenses that could include employees, may include yourself as the owner if you have budgeted that in. If you have not budgeted that in, then generally the person gets paid at the point in time in which they are in positive cash flow territory.
Okay. Cool. So then we had the next slide here. Did you want to say something about this?
Sure, yeah. I think what's really important in evaluating the alternatives is really taking a good assessment of yourself, your personal inventory, really understanding what are the skills that you bring to any business. Are you strong in sales? Are you technical? Are you operation-oriented? What are the things that you enjoyed doing in the past in either maybe other business ventures you've run or in your corporate job? What things do you know you can honestly bring as skills? On the flip side of that, it's important for you to understand where you might be lacking in skills. For example, if you're a strong operational person, but you are a little squeamish about the thought of sales and marketing, it's vitally important for you to know that going into a business, because that might be an area that you might need to either outsource or hire too. So having a very honest and thorough understanding of what you bring to the table and what you might need some help with is critical. And that's sort of your abilities too, your skills and your abilities. And that includes, on the abilities, that includes your time that you can put into it as well. Passion. What passion do you have for the business that you're evaluating? Do you feel like you can get up every day and go into your work and really be passionate, spend the time, the resources? One of the things I am often helping people understand, particularly as they evaluate a franchise business, is they may not initially be passionate about the widget that they're selling or what the franchise concept is, but what they are passionate about is being self-employed, building a business. So I think it's important to understand really what drives you, why you're doing this in the beginning, and how you can best maximize the things that you're passionate about. And then finally, understanding your resources. Again, those are things, everything from financial, what do you have to bring to the table financially, how long can you operate this business in sort of the red and feel comfortable in doing it, your time, your ability to be away from the home, your time that it's going to take to really build a business. Who do you have in your stable of people that you can go to for advice and for help, for supplements of some of the areas that you may be deficient in? Taking a good evaluation of what you have in your bag of tricks is really important to know, and how comfortable are you with those resources as you go down this path.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the sales thing as an example, because I've talked with so many people in the current economy who are out there doing one-person businesses, whether it's direct marketing or starting a consultancy or whatever. And many people are passionate about the product or the service that they produce, but the idea that in order to build up this new company, they're going to have to be spending 40 hours a week being the primary salesman for their business can be quite a shock, actually. It's, you know, and that's just a popular example. And it's a thing that you can get beyond. You can work with people who are expert at this. You can get training. You can outsource, things like that. But, you know, it's something that you have to get beyond, or otherwise you'll just be sitting there trying to sell a product with no customers and no prospect of people coming to you. You know, just setting up a website and saying, hey, I've got this great product, that doesn't do it.
Oh yeah, and I absolutely discuss that with the candidates that I work with. You know, if you are not going to be the chief person out there in the field selling your business, if you're more comfortable with the operations, it is absolutely incumbent that you try to find somebody who's your first hire as your salesperson. So that assessment of your skills and then budgeting and factoring that in and resources is critical, because that will really, really hamper the growth of a business if somebody is trying to do both scenarios, sell and operations, and are not comfortable with either of those.
Yeah, great point. So let's move on to the next piece, which is the risk versus benefit. At the end of the day, when you're trying to make a decision, many of the things you're looking at are the risks that you're taking versus the benefits that you will hope will result. And I did want to make a point here that it does include the impact on your family. If you're going off and starting a business or buying something, it affects everybody, not just you. I rarely see a situation where somebody's going off and doing their business thing and the rest of the family is untouched. So there's a lot of emotional ties there that you need to be honest about and say, is my family prepared for the journey that this is going to take, especially because it may take years, you know. And if you have small kids or you have a spouse that has a different career or whatever, I mean, this is very realistic stuff, and we need to be very clear about that. So I put together just a quick little table. This isn't all the risks and benefits, but these are some of the big ones. The risks, of course, that you take on board is the complexity. You're doing 50 jobs now, a lot of things that you've never done before, trying to learn a new business model while you're being chief salesman and bottle washer at the same time. The financial investments that you need to take, when you run out of money, you run out of money, and that is a significant issue. What is it that you have in reserve? Where else can you go? There's nothing worse than the feeling that you're starting to make a business successful, you're getting customers, and they're starting to come back to you, and then you run out of cash flow because you realize that, well, I could have made this thing fly if I'd have had a bit more of a cushion, and that's why we talk so much about that. The investment of your time and energy, have to be very honest about that and assess, yes, it is going to take an incredible amount of time and energy. Am I up for that at this point in my life? The responsibilities that you're going to be taking, you know, it's one thing to be a manager in a company and lead people and all that kind of stuff, but when you have the responsibility for getting people paid at the end of the day, and you're the end of the chain for customer complaints and making sure that suppliers and partners are happy, that's a lot of stress. And so you have to know that you're up to that. It helps to be healthy. It helps to be taking care of yourself at the same time as while you're doing all this stressful stuff. And then, of course, the uncertainty of it all. As we've heard, most small businesses fail, and many times that's not specifically due to things that you are doing wrong, but, you know, the market conditions, competitors coming up, who knows, all kinds of things. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, and that adds to the stress as well. Now, we want to counteract that with the benefits that are going to result. So the idea that you have control over your own future, maybe you're going to be making an awesome financial return eventually, enjoying what you do and learning and growing and making a specific contribution. You know, a lot of people get into these kinds of businesses because they want to do something with their lives that they feel is important and impactful. And that indeed is a benefit. And that's worth putting in stress and lots of work hours for to achieve. So this is the kind of examination that you're going to be doing as you go through the process of trying to make a decision. So we wanted to spend a minute here now on how do you actually look at these different kinds of businesses? What are all the questions? So Leslie, why don't you talk first about the franchise area? You're the expert on that, but I know your list of questions is like 100 times this long, right?
Yeah, and we certainly didn't want to scare any of you guys off the call today by providing, you know, the extensive list that I think everybody should go through. But what I wanted to highlight here, particularly in the area of validating a franchise, and what's great about validating a franchise is that you have the ability to talk to people who are living, breathing, doing their business. Either they've just gotten into it or they've been doing it for several years. So they have been able to test before you the model. And so I think you have a unique and great opportunity to really get some confidence in validating this type of business. Here are just some of the ones that I want to roll through, but by no means is this comprehensive, and it's certainly going to address some of the things that are more personal to you that only you will be able to know what's important to ask. Just a few of the questions, inquiring about initial training. You know, when you walk into a franchise, let's say you decide that you're going to run a carpet cleaning company. You may know nothing about carpet cleaning, but the true magic about a franchise is that you don't have to. But really be able to validate that. When you talk with people who are in the business, find out about the initial training and whether or not they felt successful coming out of that to the point they were confident to launch the business. Support is a huge factor in validation. It's very important for you to know which one, if the franchise company is actually giving you support. So validate that and ask about that. Are you enjoying the work? That's really important, I believe. Does the franchisee in the system actually enjoy what they're doing? I think this next one is really important. If you are a corporate employee and you are thinking about going out onto your own business for the first time in your life, it's really important to find out from other people who've made that transition, how's that gone? Is it what they expected? Is it harder? Is it easier? How's that transition gone? Is the ramp-up time what you expected? And that goes back to the slide that I indicated. Are they pretty much where they thought they would be on that spectrum in terms of break-even, cash flow, and recouping the investment? That goes along with the revenue question about are they getting what they expected? And would you do it again? I think that's really critical. If people say yes, that they absolutely would buy that franchise again, even though it's been difficult or maybe it's taken longer to ramp up, but yes, they're enjoying it. I think that's a huge validation question. So again, not at all a comprehensive list on invalidating a franchise, but at least I hope it gives you some idea of how critical it is to go in and do your due diligence and why this isn't, for most people, a decision that can be made overnight or within a week or so, but could take a month or 2 months to really get through a good diligence and feel comfortable in moving forward. And Carl's going to chat about the other two types of businesses, buying an existing business and building a business from scratch, and how you can validate those. Carl, any questions on this before you move along?
Well, I think you hinted at an important point, which is when you're going out and looking at these kinds of things, you're going to be talking to a lot of people. When I was going out and evaluating coaching franchises, for instance, I would typically talk to 4 or 5 people from each company and ask them these kinds of questions. I also had another one at the end, Leslie, which was, what question am I not asking that I should be? And I learned some really important things that way because this was a learning process, and I didn't quite know how to go through it the first time. And so being able to learn from others was a really important thing. So as we move into the other ones, just wanted to reinforce that these kinds of questions, while we've talked about them in the context of a franchise, they actually do apply to other kinds of business ventures as well. Everything is unique, sure, but would you do it again? Well, would you start a business again? Would you purchase a business again? Things like that. But if we're going to purchase an existing business, here's some additional questions which might be really interesting for you. So knowing which employees would plan to stay, and many times this is a guess, right? You say, well, some people are inclined to want to take this as an opportunity to retire. Some employees might be rather annoyed and ticked off in the change of ownership, and then other people will be pleased. So, going through and doing that assessment, because in almost every business, the people are the major engine for why the business is successful. And so you can't lose too many people and expect the business to look anything like what it did before. Next one is having an owner or a general manager be retained for transition period. This is a tricky one because it's not necessarily a good deal to have 2 bosses that have slightly different directions, but having a transition period is a very good deal to say, we're going to make sure that the employees' issues are addressed, that customers will continue to want to do business with the company, that partners will be satisfied. And that's really the third bullet here, which is to what degree have all of these outside parties been notified that, or suspect that there's going to be an impending sale, and thinking through what the impact of that is. Some businesses, you've got a really strong connection between the company and its customers. There's very personal relationships there. And so if the ownership changes, they might use that as an opportunity to say, well, let me go look at the competitors. Maybe it's time to not focus on the fact that we had such a great relationship anymore. And other kinds of business, maybe you're a little bit more transaction-oriented, and that's not such a big deal. But maybe in those cases, the suppliers are an important part of making sure that this business will continue flying successfully. What assets are included? You have to ask this very explicitly, because you could be making some big assumptions about buildings and equipment and financial assets and all kinds of things. And you need to just get that out on the table and say, what assumptions am I making that may or may not be valid? We need to go through every one of them, because this can make or break a deal, absolutely. And then the properly prepared financials. There's a lot of stories around about how people hid details when they were trying to sell a business. And so you have to really do some very intensive due diligence here, not on the assumption that the other person is being dishonest. But, you know, when you're trying to sell something, you always put the best face forward. You're trying to make things look good. And, you know, something that it may not be such a big concern to you may be a big deal to the buyer. So you want to surface those kinds of things. And this is why it takes a lot of time and a lot of discussions. You're going to spend a whole lot of time in discussions, and they're going to get more and more deep. And it's just, it's a good thing. It's what you need to do, even though it feels like you're going very slowly at the time. But it's what's going to make the transition successful. Now, if you're going to build a company, now you're starting to look at some of the other additional questions, like, is there an actual market for the product or service that I would be providing? And you've got to come up with an answer that you think is well-founded, because there's lots of examples where you'd call on a consultant or an industry study or something, and they might indicate, oh yeah, there's no way that this could fail. This is just really the hottest item right now. Well, you know, the problem with hot items is that they can disappear as quickly as they come. So you have to really watch out for that. Presumably you're looking to develop a business that's going to be around for another 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 years. And so you don't necessarily want something that's just going to be short-term and then die. Now, you can take advantage of short-term trends to get visibility and to get some initial sales, but you have to have something deeper than that. You have to have an actual sustainable market. Go and look at all of the competitors, whether they're local or not, actually, because this depends on your business model and to what degree are you selling locally or not? What kinds of relationships do you have? What is the need? And what you would like to see is that, in general, your competition is doing pretty well, but that you would bring something quite unique to the table that customers value. So not just something unique. You know, I've taken the widget and painted it yellow now. If customers don't care about that, then that's not a useful distinction. But if you have competitors, in general, that's a good thing, because they've established that there is indeed a market, and they kind of train the market to buy the product. So in that way, don't view competition as necessarily a bad thing, but going up against incumbent competitors is not easy. So you have to have something that is unique about you, which is, you know, your product, your service, how you deliver it, where you deliver it. If you can do a sustainable improvement in the price point, great, but don't run your business into the ground just trying to sell things cheaper, because at the end of the day, you need to make some profit as well. Where will you need to hire some functions in which you feel deficient? So we talked about sales as a great example of this, but, you know, all kinds of other capabilities, marketing, technical abilities, supply chain management, who knows, just all kinds of things. This is where you need to describe your business model, look at what you're able to do and what you're able to do well, and then say, at what point will I be able to hire or outsource to somebody who has the deeper skill than what I have? And that's going to be one of the key exercises you do in designing a newly built company. And then at the bottom line, as it is on all of these, what's the budget that's going to be necessary? Because you've got to have enough cushion to get all the way through that cycle, and assume that it's going to take a lot longer than you think it does for various reasons, reasons of what you're doing and how you're able to deliver, but also changes in the market and what you have yet to learn and all that kind of stuff. And so, when I talk to people about developing a business, I always have this discussion about what would happen if it took twice or three times as long for this business to take off as what you currently think. Not that I'm saying that it's going to be a failure or anything like that. It's just, what if? Okay, do you have other resources that you can pull on, not that you want to, that will help you get through those kinds of situations? So it's one of the things to look at. So anyway, I'm really glad that you could all join us today. This was, like I said, a lot of information to get through, but super, super important. But this is only Module 3, and we have a lot more to get through. So here's what the next steps are. We're going to talk about narrowing the field. So at this point, we have 1 million questions. We've got a lot of different possible directions that you might take with your decision. The next part that's really hard is how to narrow that down. So we'll talk about that next. We're going to spend the module specifically on financing alternatives. So how do you find internal and external sources of funding so that you can go through these expensive ventures? And we're going to be getting in a guest speaker who is expert in this topic, so watch for that. We haven't scheduled the date yet, so we'll let you know. And then ultimately, you're at the end of the day going to want to actually make your decision and decide, am I going to start this business? Am I going to buy this franchise? Am I going to buy this company or whatever? And so we'll have a module on how to do that. So anyway, thanks everyone for talking to us. We had, of course, our obligatory commercial here at the end. I'm Carl Dierschow. I'm with Small Fish Business Coaching. I help people who are looking to build and grow businesses that are successful, exciting, and sustainable. And Leslie?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. It was really great listening, and every time I listen to you, I even learn more to help my clients. So enjoy this interaction with you today, and hopefully everybody enjoyed this module. Again, I'm Leslie Lautzenhiser. I'm with FranChoice, and my specialty that I bring to this webinar and to you is helping people who are evaluating businesses that end up more along the lines of a franchise. I provide a free service that I help people walk through that investigation from start to finish and align them with a franchise that is the best fit for them. So again, thank you all very much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again on Module 4. Have a great day.
Thanks. See you guys.